See the Michael Jackson documentary Leaving Neverland, which is full of chilling details about alleged abuse of children by the former king of pop.
Well, of course, the Jackson family say the claims are simply not true and they intend to sue. Some of the programme is very explicit, but here is one of the less explicit clips. Let's have a look.
Once the abuse started, within that first week, every night that I was with him, there was abuse. While my mother was, next door.
He would run drills with me where we'd be in the hotel room and he would pretend like somebody was coming in and you had to get dressed as fast as possible without making noise. So not getting caught was a big, just kind of fundamental. It was very much a secret, and he would tell me that if anybody found out, his life would be over and my life would be over. And that's something he tells you over and over again.
We also on Good Morning Britain, Jackson's nephew, Taj Jackson, told us he believes his uncle's accusers are in it for the money.
Do you think that they are financially motivated?
There's an appeal right now, and they sued the estate for hundreds of millions of dollars. So right now they have 2 appeals coming up this year. So yes, I do believe that.
Because on the other side, of course, people say there's a financial motive for you to defend the reputation of Michael. I think
there's a duty for me to defend, but I'm not making money off his royalties. I wish I was making money off his royalties, but I'm not. I'm here. I flew here because I wanted to defend my uncle because he's been nothing but great to me. I have a 3-month-old baby that I just left to do this. That's how strong I feel about this.
Well, we're joined now by Dan Reid, who's the director of the documentary. Dan, morning to you.
Morning.
I don't know what the truth is about Michael Jackson. I covered his career, his life for decades, actually, as a showbiz reporter, as a newspaper editor. I interviewed him, and we ran a clip from that yesterday. I'll run that again a bit later for you. But I suppose my obvious question, it's a harrowing watch, this. 4 hours of the most searing testimony from these 2 boys and their families. At the end, I'm left with the same question I've always been left with Michael Jackson, is that other than them saying this, and they've both said the complete opposite before, in one case, under oath, in a case which actually acquitted Michael Jackson, is other than what they're saying, did you unearth any actual evidence that proves Michael Jackson was a paedophile?
Well, there's masses of corroborating evidence. If you look at the investigations that the LAPD and the Santa Barbara Sheriff's Department carried out in 1993 when Jordan Chandler came forth with his accusations, and in 2003 to 2005 when 13-year-old Gavin Arvizo accused Michael of molesting him. So there's masses of eyewitness statements by Neverland staff, by the chambermaid, by the driver, by the cook.
But none of it convicted him.
Well, that's an astonishing, isn't it? I mean, that's because the Jackson organisation and the lawyers did what they do very well. They said, look the other way. Look at Gavin's mum in the case of the little boy in the trial. She's a dreadful person, and she, did shoplifted, and she did this and that. And there was a lot of evidence in the 2005 trial that pointed to Jackson's guilt. Very good evidence.
But Jackson was acquitted. And, it seems to me that when you look at this in totality, you've got other boys like Macaulay Culkin, Corey Feldman has come out strongly yesterday. And Corey Feldman made the, I think, quite interesting point. He said, look, serial paedophiles, when they're around young boys, in this case, they'd abuse them all. That historically, that was people, if they had access to young boys, they'd do it. Corey Feldman and Macaulay Culkin tell a completely different story of their experience with Jackson, which is completely almost identical right to the point of abuse. And they say, in both their cases, no abuse ever happened. Both the people that you relied on for your documentary, both said exactly the same thing before. And as we saw from the Jackson nephew yesterday, they're trying to get millions of dollars.
Well, no, they're trying to get justice in through the courts, which is...
But also money, and the problem with this...
But are they trying to get money?
Well, Jordan Chandler, for example, that case, I covered that extensively at the time. I think Jackson ended up paying him $22 million. I mean, this is a huge payday, potentially, for anyone who can establish they were victims. And I'm not questioning them. I don't know the truth. I'm questioning you as the director, because you never went to the Jackson family before you...
We don't make any allegations about the Jackson family. So why would I?
Well, you make an allegation that Michael Jackson's a paedophile.
Yeah, so I make allegations about Michael, but Michael's dead.
But he's dead.
And I've put his rebuttals, his denials in the film.
So the devil's advocate would say, well, okay, the guy's dead. He can't respond to this.
Wade Robson and James Safechuck are not dead.
No, but the person you're accusing is. And yet, again, I say, other than all the evidence which was for the court cases in which Jackson was finally acquitted, did you unearth any new hard evidence which says that Michael Jackson's a paedophile? Because right now, his whole reputation is being completely trashed by this documentary. I don't know the answer, I'm just asking.
To talk about hard evidence, soiled underwear 20 years later, I'm sorry, that's, in paedophile cases, if this were tried in a court, it would be the evidence of these two very credible witnesses.
But it was tried in court, though.
Well, the Wade Robson and James Safechuck were never...
No, because they were giving evidence in support of Michael Jackson.
And that's what's at the heart of this, and that's what people, I hope, will understand by watching this documentary.
It's your conviction of Michael Jackson's guilt that I'm fascinated by as a director. Yeah. This has got huge global attention. It's having a catastrophic effect on Jackson's reputation, on his family, his young kids apparently are having terrible trouble with all this, as you would expect, and so on. So enormous repercussions. Yeah. And at the heart of it, you've got two people who gave evidence to support Jackson and who are suing the Jackson estate for hundreds of millions of dollars, which, always adds a slightly uncomfortable tone to me.
No, they're trying to get justice through the courts, which is
hundreds
a
of
regular
millions of
thing
dollars.
to do. You go to court. Michael, unfortunately, isn't alive, because if he were, I think there'd be a criminal trial. But
but there was a criminal trial.
Not with these two.
No, but the
thing you have to understand about child sexual abuse is that very often a very strong bond forms between the predator and the child, and that bond can last for many, many years, and that's what's happened in this case.
The enormity of the allegations you're making cannot be understated. I mean, you would accept that. And you're basically calling Michael Jackson a serial paedophile.
Yes.
And my only question is that the emphatic denials from so many other people about this mean that there is a question mark here. And I again, just say to you, are you 100% sure that your word of these two people is enough to justify calling Michael Jackson a serial paedophile?
I think the corroborating evidence around their accounts is very strong. I've looked at that. I think if you watch the film and you see how their families have just been devastated by what happened. I mean, what mother would go on television and say, I delivered my little boy into the hands of a predatory paedophile, who I thought was my best friend.
And to a certain extent got excommunicated by members of her family afterwards, because she's blamed for that. But I want to ask just a couple of questions. Why these two individuals, and they make compelling witnesses in your documentary, they're incredibly emotional. The detail is extraordinary. And as you say, the effects on the family are palpable. But what is the explanation for why they, in some cases, repeatedly supported Michael Jackson under oath and afterwards? Why do they say that they did that when they did have an opportunity when he was alive to out him as the person that they now say he was?
Wade was in love with Michael, and he wanted to do everything he could to save the man that he saw as his father figure, his mentor, and his former sexual partner.
Wade, he claims he was abused from the age of 7 to the age of 14.
So he wanted to save him. You went to court. He was defence witness number 1, and he knocked it out of the park for Michael and he was an important part of getting Michael off those charges.
And he was an adult when he did that.
And he was, and those relationships last. I mean, I think the average age.
Why do you believe these guys so emphatically? That's what I'm really curious about. Because I'm not saying either way, right?
Why should we not believe them?
Well, because I do think there's a real issue right now with this supposition that my truth is the truth. And it's been going on for the last year and a half since the start of Me Too and Time's Up and so on. And we've just seen a case in America of this guy, Jussie Smollett, who was the Empire star, who claimed he'd been the subject of a racist, homophobic attack in the street and by Trump supporters. And it turned out he invented and staged the whole thing, allegedly.
Yeah, but what's that going to do with this?
Because my point being that everyone rushed to believe my truth in that case, and it turned out that the truth was a very different thing. So again, here, this is my truth as told by two people who...
and their families.
And their families, yeah, I agree. But all of whom, you wouldn't dispute, have a vested potential massive financial interest.
That's the estate story. That's
Is that not true?
You're swallowing the Michael Jackson line, hook, line and sinker.
No, I don't have a Michael Jackson line.
You are.
Is it not true they're trying to
This isn't about money. This isn't what the Michael Jackson...
So they're not suing for money?
Well, they're suing for justice and money. How do you know you've won in a civil suit?
So they do want money there?
What's the penalty in a civil suit?
Do they want money?
I don't know. You should ask them.
Well, you know the answer.
No, they want justice. They're not fussed about the money. Right. I don't know what they do with the money when they get it. But
they're expecting, if they are successful, to win hundreds of millions.
They're entitled, as citizens, to use the courts to hold the Jackson estate, and their contention is that all these people who worked with Jackson looked the other way while they were being raped by the...
But if you have a potential prize, use that word loosely, it's not a prize, if there's a potential financial payout of hundreds of millions of dollars, there is an incentive there. If people were being disingenuous, if they were changing a story, if they were making things up, and I'm not saying they are, I'm just putting it to you, there is an incentive there, a huge financial incentive for these two guys.
A huge financial incentive for the Jackson organisation to cover up this crime.
Correct, I agree.
An even bigger incentive, because what's real is the estate's earnings. That's real. What the Jackson estate are talking about, these guys making money. That's not.
No, the Jackson family, I have no doubt the Jackson family have an equally large financial imperative to protect the estate, which is right now, with radio stations pulling Michael Jackson records and so on, clearly they're under huge attack, and if that estate goes down, so does all the revenue. I get it. It's a two-way street.
Can I ask, as we repeatedly hear, he was investigated by the police, the FBI. We all know, he was interviewed by journalists repeatedly. He was one of the most reported on, scrutinised, investigated individuals in the world. Is one person powerful enough that he can hoodwink all of those people and get away with these crimes repeatedly?
Well,
Is that also what you believe?
He did get away with it. What's at issue here is what happened behind closed doors. No one disputes the fact that he slept with little boys. Again and again and again. He spent all these nights in bed.
And that in itself is very weird.
Right.
And makes me as a father feel very uncomfortable.
So if this was the guy down the road, if this was, your next door neighbour who was constantly spending the night with little boys, and what would you think?
No, I think it'd be very weird.
So is it just because of Michael's talent as a performer that we allow him to get away?
Well, his family...
He kept saying, didn't he? I mean, as part of what is called the grooming process of these families, is he presented himself as an eternal child. And the mothers in these cases took him on as a child and felt like they loved him as a child and sort of saw that they were allowing their children to sleep in the bed with the person that they thought was another child. Actually, he was a fully formed grown-up.
Corey Feldman,
who they now allege, abused the children.
Corey Feldman came out with some pretty strong stuff on Monday about it. He was friends with Jackson as a youngster. He said, my memories, and thank God for me, my memories of Michael Jackson were mostly fond, aside from one and only fight, because he incorrectly feared I'd turn on him and make up lies. I never did. I pray those boys can sleep with that same clarity of consciousness. Let God be thy judge. He said he took issue in a documentary because Jackson's not around to defend himself and believes that Safechuck and Robson are motivated by money. So given the opportunity, he says, which he certainly had with me and others, being alone with no parents around, how did he control those urges so well while so blatantly sexual with those two boys? It doesn't really fit the profile. But what motive besides dollars do they have? Abandonment is a strong one. To give people a real look at what a 30-year-old man and stroke child and a 13-year-old boy would discuss, so everyone could hear the innocence of our relationship. He says he has tapes of his conversations with Jackson, which he says would be very illuminating.
If I was making a film about, say, Ted Bundy, the serial killer, I'm sure I could interview lots of people who weren't murdered. I mean, just because someone wasn't...
Just want to play you...
doing it to everyone.
I just want to play you a little clip from an interview I did with Jackson in 1999, which we played yesterday. Just listen to this.
If it wasn't for children, I would throw in the towel. I would kill myself. I wouldn't care to live. They give me my inspiration. They inspire me. Everything I do, every song I write, the dance, everything I do. They tried to use it against me. It's just been so unfair, and I'm very upset about it. I would slit my wrist before I would. I could never, ever. I would love to live in London because I love it so much. It's just the press is so hard on me here, and I try to do so good. I go to the hospital, I give presents to the children. As soon as I leave, the next day they go, wacko jacko, left the hospital, and he ignored all the children.
So, I mean, I remember doing that interview and concluding at the end, I still didn't really know what to make of it. For all the reasons that you've said, it's not normal for a guy of that age to be having sleepovers with young boys. I get that, and they're always young boys, very few girls, and so on. It is all very weird and odd and makes me feel uncomfortable. I'm just not certain, as you are, that Jackson was proven to be a paedophile, and I'm just concerned about the credibility of the two people you so wholeheartedly rely on.
Yeah. I mean, you know, if this is a case of what happened in the dark behind closed doors, I believe these two young men and their accounts. I think that to concoct a whole charade of, you know, your mum going on TV and your mum going on TV and your sister and your brother, even in the American version, all being devastated, and your wives all being devastated. I mean, it just beggars belief.
Well, I think, you know...
Well, it beggars belief until you remember that a previous alleged victim, Geordie Chandler, got 22 million, and his family...
Why would you give a 13-year-old 22 million?
You would do it because in America there is a suing culture, and they settle all the time, stuff like that. And if you're worth $1 billion, 22 million is neither here nor there to get rid of a problem, isn't it? I mean, I just come back to...
What was that problem that he was getting rid of, though?
Well, I don't know. I mean,
Well, this is the problem, isn't it? Look,
well, I understand that you're completely certain about this. I'm just not as certain. I don't know where the truth lies. I'm not sure we'll ever get to the truth.
Whatever happens, it's absolutely... I mean, it's a very troubling documentary, and it's devastating if it's not true, and it is absolutely devastating if it's true. Dan Reed, thanks very much.
Thank you.
It's Leaving